I think my husband fathered my best friend's children. Hey guys, it's been a rough week. A lot has happened. I don't really want to talk about all of it in detail, so I'm going to keep this short. I know I never shut up, it's just how I am, but I'm going to be much more brief this go around. Luke has a lawyer now. I don't know him, but he met with Zach and Paige. To everyone saying I should have Amy arrested, I probably could have if I had shown the police the video. Instead, I just sent it to my lawyer. Maybe this makes me foolish, but even now, I think part of me is still trying to protect people I once loved and go easy on them. But everything's been on hold for the past few days because Jim had a heart attack. I saw Luke and I saw Amy and Amy's kids at the funeral. It was the first time we were all together since before all this happened. Nobody talked about what's going on, short of Amy briefly apologizing for what happened before. She did seem sincere, I'll give her that, but I wasn't about to call her out anyway. Amy, Luke, and Kat all seemed pretty devastated. I was too. But we all agreed not to argue or talk about the divorce and to just let the day be a ceasefire to focus on Jim. Luke and I had a nice conversation about him. I've been spending time with my kids and taking a couple of days off work. I have enough of them on the back burner. Luke also saw the kids twice, before and after the funeral, with me present. It went well. At my direction and Sophie's, they didn't mention Amy, and Luke didn't try anything funny with any of them. I think he does miss them and hate that he can't see them, thanks to all this. The kids are also pretty upset about losing Grandpa, on top of not being able to see Dad as much as before. I don't think any of them blame me, but that's far from the point, frankly. Carter slept in my bed the last 3 nights. I'll get more into this in the future when I have the energy to talk about what's going on in more detail. But whoever suggested that Kat lied about the test results was correct. She never sent them in. She confessed as much to me. I guess she didn't feel comfortable going behind her son's back, but did feel comfortable lying to me to protect him. Until she didn't. Until she felt guilty, and she came clean. Under the circumstances, I am not angry with her, but I know better than to trust her anymore. As far as I know, she did not tell Luke about the test. But it means Tom could still be Luke's son. Probably is. My lawyers finished going through Luke and Amy's letters with a finer tooth comb. The bottom line is, they definitely found what it was that Amy didn't want me to see, and I now completely understand why she was so panicked. It has to do with why Amy and Luke didn't marry conventionally. They did something very bad. But this is genuinely something that I'm not sure I should be talking about. Even on an anonymous internet post, I haven't even been able to collect my feelings about what Amy and Luke have done, especially with everything else going on, so I don't know if I should be more explicit. I'm sorry. I know that's not what anyone wanted to hear, but please try to understand. Paige agreed with me that when in doubt, don't post it. I've told my lawyers to put a pin in it for now because I'm in no fit state to figure out how to proceed with it or if I should use it against them. I'm just feeling like shoot, honestly. It's difficult not to blame myself for Jim. I can only imagine Luke and Amy are blaming themselves too. I know they're bad people. I don't forgive them. But this tore them apart as it did me. And I think all 3 of us feel like the divorce stressed Jim out to the point where it may have contributed. He already had heart disease. And in particular, I blame myself for showing him what I showed him. I showed him proof of the affair shortly before he died. I'll be carrying that with me for a very long time, even if I shouldn't. I'll update again whenever I do. I'm sorry. I'll respond to comments as I can. Now for a few comments. One commenter struggled to think of bad things a couple can do to prevent a conventional marriage. Another commenter mentioned seeing posts of people guessing they're half-siblings, which is the only thing they could think of. Different Dinner 510 guessed they might be half-siblings as well, suggesting maybe the mother-in-law and father-in-law knew about it too. Or maybe just the father-in-law knew because the mother-in-law had her suspicions, but the father-in-law was sort of in denial. Another commenter explained that this would clarify why the mother-in-law didn't send in the DNA test, as if her son wasn't the father, they'd still show up as related, just at a lower percentage. Another commenter added that it also explains why the mother-in-law and father-in-law helped Amy financially. Another commenter noted that it might be why Luke and Amy never intended to stop inbreeding between the kids. One commenter remarked that the story has more twists than a pretzel, a larger character cast, and more installments than any Reddit post they've ever seen, with cliffhangers worthy of Better Call Saul. Another commenter expressed skepticism over the heart attack and funeral, suggesting it's worse than Days of Our Lives now, and jokingly predicted that they would find out Amy is Jim's illegitimate daughter in the next update. Another commenter mentioned that they and their friends guessed that either Kat or Jim would suddenly die. Finally, one commenter admitted that even if it's fake, they're still fully invested. Hey everyone, this may very well be my last update for a while. I'm in therapy now, as are my children. And, from what I hear, Amy's children are as well, so that's good. So, I should probably be focusing on healthier ways to expel my feelings. Nonetheless, I have talked to my therapist about these posts, and according to her, venting anonymously online can be healthy, up to a point. If I do talk about my life again, I may do it in different subreddits or something. I'm still not sure. I have also met with the judge now. Many were worried about how these posts might come back to bite me in the butt, legally speaking. The short answer is that they won't. The long answer is that because they're anonymous, there's technically no risk of defamation or slander. I've changed enough of the meaningless details and given everyone fake names. The posts aren't going to be relevant in the case, and I'm clear to keep writing them if I so choose, so long as I don't discuss the details of the actual case itself. Though I think the judge would prefer I just stop writing these altogether, one of the reasons I may do so. Without divulging the specifics, I went ahead and reported what I had learned, and all hell broke loose. I knew I had to do so, because Amy and Luke had changed gears after Jim passed. They began to make the case that Luke and I had always had an open marriage, that there could be no such thing as an affair, and any instances of Luke sleeping with Amy could not be counted against him. It is no accident that they chose to do this after we lost Jim. As far as I can tell, he was the only other person who knew about what Luke and Amy did and would have done something about it. Now that they don't have to worry about that, I think they wanted to claim I always knew about the affair and that it was no true affair. When I didn't report them, they must have assumed I didn't know the truth, and they changed their story. But I knew. I reported it, and now they're fricked, which unfortunately means everyone else found out. There was no way the children wouldn't learn the truth through the grapevine. I told Sophie and Tom personally because I figured they would learn of it anyway. The others did. Tom was pretty shell-shocked. I know I'm just the messenger, but I felt terrible, and I wanted to comfort him, but there wasn't a whole lot I could do. Poor Kaylee did not handle it well. I'm told she had several meltdowns, and then tried to run away. I know she tried to run away because she came to our house for sanctuary, and literally, I had to give her back. I knew all the reasons I had to, but I was sorely tempted to give the middle finger to all of them and let Kaylee stay with us against Amy's wishes. But no, I had to relinquish her, and honestly, nothing has been harder than that was. I know it isn't my fault, but I still feel like I betrayed her. Sophie's also been dealing with a lot of anger toward her father, especially after he and Amy forced Kaylee to come back to stay with Amy again. All of this. It hit Sophie and Kaylee the hardest. Luke wanted to see Sophie again, and she refused. She wouldn't come out of her room. But technically, I was supposed to let him see her, but she's 15 years old. I told her to come out of her room. She wouldn't. So in my book, I tried. This was after Kaylee's incident, so when Luke pressed me to force Sophie out of her room, I'm not proud to say I shouted at him to leave. My blood was boiling by that point. Throughout all this, my soon-to-be ex-husband and his affair partner are still acting like I'm the bad guy. Luke and Amy are angry with me, and that's putting it lightly. They have no right to be, but they are, or at least they're acting angry. I now have a restraining order against Amy because I was quite certain she would confront me after the fact, and she did. After I reported them, and before Kaylee came over, Amy came to the house while my kids were home, banged on the door, and screamed. She was furious with me for what I had done, but I don't know what she expected me to do. I called the police, but Amy was gone by the time they showed up. They were just as useless as last time, to be honest. When Kaylee came to me for asylum, Amy came after her, but I wouldn't let her in until she called the cops herself. I would only let one of them take Kaylee. Amy was not setting foot in my house. I was very clear to explain the situation, but it didn't matter. Amy later smeared me on social media and framed me as a kidnapper. I set the record straight without divulging too much about the circumstances of the situation, which I was tempted to do. Luke also gave me the lecture of a lifetime when I saw him, but I just kept cutting him off and spitting the facts in his face. I don't know if it's been my time away from him, but I'm learning to recognize his nonsense now, where previously I fell for it every time. He always sounds so reasonable and sweet, but what he's actually saying is often circular and evasive. Honestly, I am so angry with him for what he's done to his children. All of them. Kaylee especially. I want to adopt that girl. I know I can't, but I want to. Kat and I had a long talk as well. So far as I can tell, she didn't know, and she's genuinely sorry for her earlier deception. Trust takes time to rebuild, but I also understand that she was in an awful position. But now that certain things have come to light, she's kind of in shambles herself, so I pity her. Not to mention, if Amy loses custody of her children, and she very well might, I'll need all the help I can get. I can't take all of them in. I don't have the space. Kat will need to do some of the legwork, so I'm trying to give her the chance to earn my trust back, sort of out of necessity. I can't speak to the long term, but if all goes as it should, Luke's not even going to be getting visitation of my kids. We'll know soon enough though, and it will be on record if Amy's children were fathered by him. All I know is, they've always been quite certain Kaylee was, though they never had her tested. So far as I can tell, Amy hasn't really been intimate with anyone other than Luke for a long time. For the record, Kat is still supporting Amy financially, and by that I mean she's supporting Amy's kids. I don't mind that. If Amy loses custody, that all goes away anyway. As to the how and why of Luke and Amy getting together, from the letters, I've put the pieces together as best I could. Amy was sexually abused as a child, and Luke was apparently the only person she felt safe exploring her sexuality with when they were in high school. It was a very bad idea, and they both knew the reason it was a very bad idea well before they made that choice. As to the lie about them being surrogate siblings, apparently they always did have that kind of relationship emotionally, but they also did this. After Tom was born, they also believed Tom to be theirs. Going off the letters, the bond took on more romantic aspects as well. Amy describes Luke as my person, and he says the same about her. I did read the letters in more depth for as much as it sickened me. I wanted to understand. I'm doing better overall though. Personally, I'm doing better, which makes me feel kind of guilty because nobody else is. My kids are miserable, which makes me miserable, but I know there's light at the end of the tunnel, and I want them to see it. Luke and Amy are miserable, which honestly, I'm not going to say I'm glad about, but I don't know what they were expecting. They've been playing a monstrous game for decades. It was always going to have consequences sooner or later. Amy's kids are miserable, especially Kaylee. I wish I could reach out to her again, but I absolutely can't, except through Tom, and he needs to play this carefully. Kat is miserable too. We're all still reeling from the loss of Jim. And honestly, the Kaylee incident really tore my heart in half. But I think I'm over the hump, and am taking comfort in how I'm actually choosing myself for a change. Now for a few important comments. Flynn JM asked if the report involved calling the cops or just telling everyone in the circle that it wasn't an open marriage and that they are siblings. Also asked if Luke is still with his mom or just shacking up with Amy at this point. I went through legal channels, not social. As of now, he's staying with Amy, but I don't believe it's going well. Her children aren't happy with him or with her. Flynn JM expressed concern that if this gets out to the kids' peers, it could end any normal shot at a normal childhood. Flynn JM also wondered if Amy keeps showing up because Luke is trying to gain forgiveness, thinking she finally got her man. Asked how people reacted to her social announcements about the open marriage and Luke being her baby daddy. She only made posts accusing me of kidnapping Kaylee and lying about her and Luke, which caused a lot of commotion even after I cleared the air. Most people seem to believe me or believe that it was a misunderstanding. As far as her claims of an open marriage, that was only the statement from Luke's lawyer. It's not widespread, at least not that I've seen. Neither of them have confirmed the paternity of Amy's children. She's maintaining that they aren't Luke's, and even if they were, that's between the two of them and no one else. DNA tests will sort that out. They'll sort everything out. As to my reporting, she and Luke are maintaining that they don't know anything about what I accuse them of, but I have proof that they did know. Flynn JM remarked on Amy, alluding to the inbreeding in her post, and suggested a possible self-harm situation developing. Also asked if it's affecting Luke's employment since Amy doesn't work, and where Luke's money is going. They both work, and so far as I know, it hasn't affected their employment. Flynn JM commented on the stress affecting work performance and questioned why Amy needed money over the years if she works. Her job wasn't enough to support her family on its own, and I thought she was my dear friend. Flynn JM then questioned why Amy is working if she has financial support from multiple people. This is why I always insisted she wasn't a leech, that she was trying whenever anyone would ask over the years. Umbrianth speculated if Jim's passing would embolden Luke and Amy and expressed sympathy for the losses and hoped the kids can recover in time. Longshot E81 mentioned following the situation, but asked what actually happened and why Amy and Luke couldn't just be together as a normal couple. Mazakincia guessed that Amy and Luke were half-siblings or somehow related. Luke and Amy having children together at all is grounds for those children being taken, because Luke and Amy are siblings. Everyone figured it out anyway. Electric Milk 426 asked for clarification on whether Amy was Jim's affair child, with whom, and how Luke and Amy are related by blood. Amy's mother was one of Jim's students. He was a professor. Luke and Amy are half-siblings. Seaworthiness, Fun3703 remarked on the sadness of Luke keeping this hidden from his mom and assumed Kat didn't know Amy was his affair child. She was totally clueless about that part. Am I the idiot for refusing to be my twin sister's surrogate despite her desperation and family pressure? I, Celeste, have an identical twin sister. We'll call her Stacy for the sake of the story. Our mother unfortunately passed in child labor, and we were raised by our father. Stacy has been married to Jeff for 8 years, and I have been in a relationship with Mike for 3 years now. One thing I've always known about my sister is that she wanted to be a mom. Even when we were children, she was always thinking about wedding ideas, nursery themes, baby names, etc. I was always more focused on books and having fun. I am now a flight attendant, and I am also attempting to become a published author. My sister has not worked, ever honestly. When we graduated high school, we went straight to college. She met her boyfriend in college, and once she graduated, she became a stay-at-home girlfriend until she became his wife. I have known for a while that my sister has been attempting to become pregnant, unsuccessfully. She has experienced a single miscarriage and has been unable to become pregnant again after thousands and thousands of dollars being spent on IVF and pretty much anything they could do because she wanted to experience pregnancy. After 5 years of no success, they have started to discuss other options. My sister isn't interested in adoption and is very adamant about having a child that has both of their DNA. Her words, not mine. About 3 weeks ago, she came to my house and we were hanging out as we usually do, just chatting and watching Modern Family. She told me she had a serious question and needed to ask me while she still had her nerves. It scared me, but she asked if I could be her surrogate. I was frozen for a second and asked what she meant. She told me that I know what a surrogate was. She needed me to be her surrogate. I expressed that she knew I wasn't interested in having children. This could definitely be due to how we came into the world, but I'll be honest and say I have never found the thought of having children appealing in any way. I told her that I would have zero issues with donating my eggs to her. However many she needed, she could have them all, but I could not carry her child. Upon hearing that, she became so angry. Her face was so red, and she was just yelling about how it's obvious how jealous and hateful I am because this is a small task. I didn't want to bring it to her attention that she has always spoken about having more than 4 kids. Would the expectation be for me to do this every time? I don't know. I'm starting to feel so bad. She ended up telling me that if I couldn't do this one thing for her, how could I ever call myself her sister? She broke a picture of us I have sitting on my mantle and stormed out. Since then, she's only texted me pictures of her diaries from when we were kids and all of their vision boards saying that I'm stopping her from creating a family for no reason and to think about the bigger picture. My boyfriend refuses to give me advice, saying that it's my sister, and he doesn't feel comfortable attempting to sway me in either direction because it's such a touchy subject. Honestly, this is the longest I've ever gone without communicating with my sister, and I am seriously on the verge of giving in. I am reading all the comments, and I want to say thank you so much. I feel so much better knowing I'm not the villain, but I would be lying if I said I am not leaning towards just doing it. This disconnect with my sister brings me immense discomfort in ways I cannot verbally express, but I see 2 frequent questions I want to answer to hopefully get different answers. Money. My mother did not die of natural causes. It was provider error. My father sued the hospital, and my sister and I have sizable trusts with that money. So, money is not an issue for either of us, and her husband is financially well off as well. So not working for 9 months or paying for the egg retrieval process, etc., isn't an issue in any way. It's more so her stubbornness for the baby to share our DNA and for one of us to be carrying it. Since we're identical, if she can't have a baby, how can I? Her lack of being able to have a child is due to a car accident we were in, which is also the source of the miscarriage she experienced. Due to her being in the front seat with our father, they took the brunt of the crash, unfortunately. Her body is now unable to carry a child, and she has had extreme complications with egg retrieval. I'm not sure about the details of how that has gone wrong, just that it is not working and not an option. It is hard to get her to discuss non-viable options so I can gain a better understanding. Doctors will not allow me to be a surrogate due to me not having a child. Thank you so much for this information. We have family dinner this upcoming Thursday because we always watch football with our dads and significant others. I'm sure this topic will come up if she decides to attend. I'm hoping I can bring this up to her. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, "Most doctors would refuse to allow you to be a surrogate as you've not previously had children. She'll be hard-pressed to find one that would. Not to mention, she's asking her sister to sacrifice her body and potentially her life to fulfill her dream. That's not fair at all. If she can afford IVF, she can afford a surrogate, not the idiot." Another commenter added, "I'd also add that her losing her temper in this way screams she's not stable enough to enter this sort of relationship with, not the idiot." Then someone else commented, "She did it to manipulate her sister. If she has a kid, she'll manipulate its whole life to match her vision boards." And another person said, "NTA, you are not the jerk for refusing to be a surrogate for your sister. It's your body, and you have the right to decide what you do with it. Your sister's reaction is unreasonable and manipulative, and you shouldn't feel pressured into doing something you're not comfortable with." Now for the 2-day update. So I promised an update tomorrow, but my dad actually ended up calling me while I was hanging out, and told me to come over for dinner yesterday night so we could talk. I want to start by saying thank you so much for all the comments and advice. Some of you were jerks to not only me but my sister and boyfriend as well. I still appreciate the help. I didn't even ask about what when my dad called. I figured he had spoken to Stacy. Based on comments, I know you guys won't be happy, but I spoke with my boyfriend about where his head was if I were to go forward with it. He told me that he loved me and would support me through any and everything, but he would not continue to sit by while my sister made me feel like trash. And if I was doing this under coercion, he would not be able to support me, which I honestly completely understand. When we went over to my dad's for dinner, my sister and brother-in-law were already there. I spoke to them both when we walked in, but only my sister replied. My brother-in-law gave me the most disgusting look and greeted my boyfriend only. My dad sat us down at the table, and there was just this awkward silence and tension I could cut with a butcher knife. He said, "Somebody talk. We need to get this resolved before the game tomorrow night." My dad loves football. I started off the conversation by telling her that I did some research, and atop of my initial concerns, I now had a few more and needed to know exactly what she needed from me. I first asked her what being a surrogate would look like. She just said, "Are you agreeing to it?" When I told her no, I just needed more details. She broke down crying. I asked her if she knew that a doctor would deny me from being a surrogate, given that I've never successfully carried a child to term. And she said she knew that, and she would just send my brother-in-law and me to a center of excellence. We can pretend we're a couple, and once I'm successfully inseminated, then I would request a transfer from that provider to her OBGYN for the continuation of care. My father intervened and said that asking me to do something a doctor wouldn't sign off on was a terrible way to attempt to begin motherhood. You could tell he wasn't on board with any of it, but didn't want to pick a side. He asked her why she was so uncomfortable with the idea of a surrogate, and that's when my brother-in-law interjected and said, "Don't try to berate my wife with these stupid questions. Talk to your selfish witch of a daughter about why she can't help her sister." That immediately shifted the mood. My boyfriend started to yell at him for calling me a witch. My dad told him he could not disrespect his daughters in his home, and everything just went up in flames. My sister was crying, asking me to do her this favor, practically begging. I told her that if I could trade places with her, I would, but I was scared and just didn't want to die. I think that was the first time I had said that out loud ever. We couldn't get more solved after that. My dad asked my brother-in-law to leave because he couldn't control himself and refused to apologize. When he was walking out, my sister told him she would meet him in the car and asked me to come and talk to her on the porch, just the two of us. I went out with her, and she apologized for her husband calling me a witch, saying that they were just on edge and it's been stressful. I told her that she shouldn't apologize for him and that we'd figure something out. She asked me to reconsider and just kept saying, "You don't get it. You don't understand." When I pressured her for more, she admitted that her in-laws made a cruel joke at one of their dinners recently about how she was a unaliver, referring to the child she lost. She said she asked him why he didn't stand up for her when they made the joke, and he said because it was true. He made some weird comments about her not being able to make up for it, and how he was so excited to see what their child would look like, and how he would never be able to look into a child and see pieces of them both. So she had the idea of me carrying the child, and he was super on board. But the way she said it was like he planted a seed, and she seems to believe it was her idea. She said she hadn't seen him that excited since the baby, and she just needed my help to get everything back to normal. I tried to explain to her that nothing would ever be normal again, and that what she was trying to do was the wrong thing. But he just started blaring the horn, rushing her to the car, and she said she'd call me later. I feel like I may lose my sister, but I now am not even willing to donate my eggs for her to have a baby with him. I took your guys' advice and looked up the egg donation process, and wow, not at all what I expected. I want her to divorce him. I am never going to help her procreate with that man. I genuinely think I'd be a surrogate for her to be a single mom before I'd ever allow her to place his child in me or take my eggs to even create a child with him. I had no clue that his family was pushing so much guilt onto her. I have literally been jumping at my phone every time it rings because I know she'll be calling soon, and I'll have to tell her that. I'm terrified I'll lose my sister, but I can't and won't do this. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, "What a manipulative bastard he is. Your sister should divorce and stay away from her in-laws. No wonder that man is that way. He needs therapy, ASAP." Another commenter added, "OP showing some healthy backbone," about which there was some doubt in the first post. Assuming this is real, it's a super stressful situation, but she appears to be rising to the occasion. Assholes seems like an inadequate word to describe sister's husband and his family. Then another commenter remarked, "Wow, Can't believe her own husband called her a lever for having a miscarriage. I hope she wakes up from the brainwashing. Am I the idiot for telling my parents to enjoy their misery after they defended my cheating ex-fiancé? I lost my cool with my parents for pushing me to forgive my cheating ex. I was supposed to be married in July. 2 months ago, I came home from a work trip to find my ex-fiancé in bed with my best friend's sister. I kicked him out, canceled the wedding, and warned him to get his stuff or I'd get rid of it. Weeks later, I dumped it all on the curbside with a free sign, sold or donated everything he gave me, and pawned the ring. I blocked him everywhere. I called the cops when he showed up banging on my door and again when he turned up at my workplace and made a scene. I even called them on his family when they showed up to plead his case. I didn't go scorched earth on my ex-best friend's sister. I did tell her husband I caught her in bed with my ex. Last I heard, she'd been kicked out and was living with her parents. My ex-best friend tried talking me into giving them both a chance to explain. When I refused, she got angry, called me petty and cold-hearted, so I kicked her to the curb too. I don't want dishonest people who are blasé about betrayal in my life. This encounter simmered under my skin until I unleashed on my parents. Last week, I met my parents for dinner. I took a date with me, hoping his presence would prevent any discussion about my failed engagement. My parents have been pressuring me to work things out with my ex. They said he's sorry, I owe it to him to talk, and I'm cruel for shutting him out. They questioned how I could call the police on him and his family. They said he's having a rough time, he's depressed, and that he loves me. They insisted it's time to grow up and forgive him. No. My date's presence didn't stop them from bringing it all up again. I lost my cool. I asked my father if he expected me to give my ex a pass every time he cheats, like he does. I asked my mother how she turns a blind eye to her husband's infidelity. I questioned if this is the life she wants for me and my sister. I asked if they knew the impact of their actions on us growing up. Did they not wonder why I'm the only child who still talks to them? Do they not question why they weren't invited to my brother's weddings or have never met their wives and children? Do they think my sister's silence is just a tantrum? I stood from the table, congratulated them on losing their last child, and told them I hoped their arrogance and misery would comfort them to their last breaths. Then I left. My date, who I should have saved for a proper date rather than a showdown with my parents, took me to a bar, let me cry on his shoulder, and made sure I got home safely. The next day, he messaged me to see if I was okay and sent over food with DoorDash. I didn't block my parents, but I haven't heard from them. It's been a week, and I've calmed down enough to feel regret. Not for what I said, but because I can see the looks on their faces when I made my final farewell. I crushed them, especially my mother. Despite their faults, I love my parents. I don't like knowing I hurt them. I'm feeling a lot of guilt about it. Now for a few comments. English Birdie said, NTA. Well, maybe to the date, but he seemed to take it well. Good for you for not taking back a cheater. What's wrong with all these people who think you should have? Sissy Cindy 109 commented, seems like she has had too much experience with cheaters. No wonder she doesn't tolerate that BS. Bunny Slayer 64 added, yes, he's a keeper. Dubious 455-80113 said, takes her to a bar, gets her home safely, and then sends food in the morning. 100% keeper. Not So Religious Now commented, NTA. So many people say be the bigger person, but that's just straight up BS. They want you to turn a blind eye to betrayal, but no. Some of us find that to be a complete deal breaker. I'm with you, 100%. Cut them all out of your life because what's more important is your mental well-being and not giving closure or forgiveness towards those that hurt you. As for your parents, they made their choices and now they have to live with the consequences of their shitty actions. Also, your date sounds like a good person. Regardless of how that turns out, he stood by you and gave you comfort food. That's a big plus in my book. When asked about being the bigger person, OP responded, I could maybe be the bigger person if he got me a burrito instead of the taco I wanted. Cheating on me in my apartment in my bed? Frick off. Take your filthy butt out with the other piece of trash. Now for the 6-month update. It's been a minute since I was here last. Life has been busy, work has been busy, and updating Reddit wasn't on my mind. Apologies to all those that continue to send messages asking for an update. I figure better late than never. A quick recap. I lost my temper with my parents when they tried to push me to forgive and reconcile with my cheating ex. Some really hurtful and harsh truths were shared by me to them in the moment. Afterwards, I felt tremendous guilt. The regret started to eat at me. Where to start? First, a thank you to all who replied to my post. I tried to read every comment, and though I didn't post for the validation most of you gave, receiving it did lighten the load a little bit. It didn't take away from the guilt I carried, but I was able to work through that to see that although my timing was off, what I said was absolutely necessary. Thank you, too, to some of those that sent me private messages rather than posting on the main thread. Having read your own stories of a similar upbringing, conversing with you has helped me to understand that my childhood and teens were traumatic. Those years left wounds that I'd never addressed until this all came about. One more shout out to those that sent harassing messages about my choices. Those people that preached about the sanctity of marriage and how men are basic creatures with basic needs. Those that attempted to school me in how to be a woman that needs to learn to do my duty by allowing a man his vices, and that it was really all my fault for not supporting my ex in his time of need. Special shout out to the men that offered to teach me how to be submissive and learn my place in this world. And last but not least, the sweet little chicken nugget that told me my reaction was proof that I am a serial cheater and my ex should have used a cattle prod on my happy place. It must have been tough for all of you when your women left. Big props to those ladies for escaping a life of misery with you. Now for what has happened since. My mother left my father not long after my post, maybe a couple of weeks after. She showed up at my apartment one night with her luggage. I can't explain how broken and pitiful she was. I brought her inside, held her, and my heart broke for her. I realized then that she had no one she could turn to, absolutely no one. No family, no friends. I cannot help but wonder if she had been all alone for all the years of her marriage, and if me or one of my siblings had said something sooner, would she have had the courage to leave my father then? I'd never seen my mother, usually so dignified and unruffled, look so broken. It shocked me to see her that way. It worried me so much that I made her sleep in my bed with me. I called my siblings, and within days they all came to show support and love. Then it was me, my mother, and my sister sleeping in my bed. It was good for her to see that her children still cared. Because we did care, we did love her. It was the situation my siblings distanced themselves from. At first, my mother stayed with me. She was having a hard time of it. Years of humiliation, shame, and guilt ate at her. I was worried about her state of mind and didn't like to leave her alone. I couldn't take time off work to be with her every second of the day, so I took her to the shelter and we got her a dog. My thinking was if she had something to take care of, it would distract her from dark thoughts. I was hoping for a puppy because they're playful and would keep her busy, but she fell in love with a 5-year-old mixed breed, and he fell right back. He's a goof. We don't know how it happened, but we woke up one night to him howling because he had somehow wedged his head in between the spindles on the stairs. His whole head. We had to call the fire department to rescue him. Of course, my mother didn't think he was at fault, and she now refers to him as her baby. He adores my mother, though. My oldest brother moved some things around, then moved her across the country to live with him and his family. He thought she would do better if there was no chance of her running into dad or one of his many women. He found her a therapist, and that seems to be working. She is loving being a grandmother, and all reports are that she is an indulgent one. She has a separate in-law suite, so she gets to see them every day. My brother tells me when the kids go missing, they can now be found at grandma's. My dad is my dad. He doesn't lack for company. I had a dinner with him not long after my mother moved across the country, where he introduced me to the new woman in his life. I reminded them both that I knew exactly who she was, considering she called my mother her best friend for all my life. Cue another awkward dinner. My dad tried to make it as pleasant as he could, but whenever she spoke to me, I would bring up a memory from my childhood of her spending time with our family and ask if she was sleeping with my father all the way back then. The next day, he called to tell me how disappointed he was with me. I felt it only fair to share my own disappointments. We argued for a bit. He tried to downplay all he had done over the years, tried to play the victim of his own actions. I ended up cutting the conversation short and blocking him. It was just over a month ago when he showed up at my door. I wouldn't let him in, and I'm sure that rattled him some. He told me he didn't want to lose me too. Say what you want about him, but he is my dad. I love him. I don't want to lose him either. He promised he wouldn't force me to interact with any of his women. So far, we have had a couple of pleasant outings that have gone well so far. I am cautiously hopeful that we can continue to be in each other's lives. As for me, well, I took that advice some of you gave me, and I am in therapy. It is humbling to come to the realization that though you may think you're fine, you are actually not. It has been almost unbearable to face all that history, and excruciatingly painful to dig through it all. At the end of some sessions, all I want to do is head to the nearest bar and drink until I forget all about what I just went through to find out where it all started and why I am the way I am. I think therapy is one of the most difficult things I have ever done. I don't know how some of you have been doing it for as long as you have. I also don't know why you do it so willingly. I'm a crazy nutter for listening to all you nutters in the first place, but it is helping. Now, for the update most of you want. I cannot even tell you how many messages I continue to receive from people wanting to know about him. It was almost like you all were saying, "Girl, we don't care about whatever life crisis you're going through, just tell us about the date." Well, I haven't replied to any of those queries because my post wasn't about him. Now, I figure, In a roundabout way, I owe you something because you all played a part in where we are today. I won't give a rundown of everything that has happened between us, but I will give you a few things. He contacted me after seeing a podcast on YouTube. He sent me a link with the query, "Is this you?" It would be an understatement to say I was mortified. My mortification kept me from replying to him. I was so deep in my embarrassment that I didn't even bother to read the messages he sent me over the next couple of weeks. When I finally did read them, it was to find a whole heap of screenshots of people's comments. I'm going out on a limb by saying, you don't need me to tell you the contents of the comments he was sending me. I eventually got back to him. It was difficult for us to make time to see each other. As I stated earlier, my life, both personal and professional, has been busy. He also has a life and work. We were only able to meet up for coffee a couple of times. I didn't think we were going to be able to grow a friendship, let alone anything beyond that. I've since learned that he is tenacious and persistent, like a dog with a bone. He kept at it until we found time to go on a second date. That date went well and led to another, then another. Then he introduced me to the two most important people in his life, his grandparents. His grandfather carves little wooden figurines, and I have since acquired a flock of wooden birds. His grandmother thinks I'm too skinny. She feeds me whenever I see her and usually sends me home with food. He gets along with my sister and brothers. He came with me to visit my mother on her birthday and met them all. He was very gracious with her. I had him saved in my phone as Cheeseburger. He took issue with that because he bought me a double cheeseburger, so I started calling him Double Cheese and then shortened that to DC. He is still saved in my phone as Cheeseburger. He's an undercover Swiftie, and I don't quite know what to do with that. I don't have anything against Taylor Swift, but I sure didn't pick him to love her. He did use his little sister and niece as cover for his Taylor Swift love. Now he uses me. I am fine with being so used. Now for a few comments. Fancy Association 484 said, "Double cheese is the new honey." Anode75 commented, "You have to marry the man that buys you double cheeseburgers." Starry Dust 4444 shared, "This is a very satisfying update. Seems everyone is making progress and moving in the right direction, except your father. It didn't seem to bother him at all that his marriage to your mother ended. I mean, they had to have been married for over 30 years. I'm so happy to hear you're dating the cheeseburger. I hope things continue to go well with that. Was hoping to hear something about the cheating ex, like he's homeless and lost his job. Lol." To which OP replied, "He's not even a blip on my radar." PD31 added, "Lol, thanks for that. I'm sure I wasn't the only one reading all that and just thinking, did you see the guy again?" most of the way through. OP responded, "I imagine people thinking that as I was typing it out."